Pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet and watch miracles unfold in your life. There are moments in life when nothing works. Not advice, not medicine, not even time. You smile in public, but your soul is exhausted. You pray, but your mind wanders. You hope, but it feels like hoping in the dark. And in that darkness, you start to ask, where is God? Why doesn't He answer? What if I told you that the silence isn't a punishment, but an invitation? You're not watching this by accident. There's a reason you pressed play. There's a reason your heart is restless right now. It's because you're being drawn, not to more information, but to an encounter. An encounter with something most people overlook. A devotion given directly by Jesus, meant for the hardest moments of your life. A spiritual weapon designed not for saints in monasteries, but for ordinary people who are falling apart. This isn't just another prayer. This is a portal, a key, a doorway into mercy. The Chaplet of Divine Mercy isn't about perfection. It's about surrender. It's not about fancy words or religious performance. It's about trusting that, even now, even after all you've done, you are still loved, still seen, still pursued. In this video, we are not just going to explain the chaplet. We are going to walk through the mysteries no one talks about. We'll uncover the hidden spiritual reality behind each word. We'll go deep into what happens when you pray it, who it was meant for, and why it might be the one thing standing between you and the breakthrough you've been begging for. You'll learn truths that even many believers have never heard. You'll feel the urgency of the time we're living in. And more than anything, you'll be invited, not to watch from the outside, but to enter into a moment that could change your life. If your soul has been longing for peace, if your heart has been crying out for a sign, if you've been wondering whether your suffering has any meaning, then let this video be your sacred interruption. This is where it begins. When heaven is silent, mercy still speaks. There comes a time when the soul no longer knows what to say. The tears have already been cried, the prayers have already been whispered, and all that's left is silence. Not the kind that comforts, but the kind that echoes, deep, hollow, almost unbearable. You wonder if your voice still matters, if your pain is still heard. You reach for God, and all you feel is absence. No response, no warmth, just that aching space where answers used to be. This silence has broken many, not because they were weak, but because they were honest. Honest enough to admit that faith doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes it feels like fog, thick, quiet, cold. And in that fog, you begin to question everything. Does God still see me? Did He walk away? Or worse, was He never really there? But there is something no one tells you in those moments. Something most people don't realize because they give up before it's revealed. Silence is not the end of your story. It's the setting, the backdrop God chooses when He's preparing to speak mercy into your life in a way that will change you forever. God does not compete with noise. He waits for the soul to quiet down. And when that silence becomes unbearable, that's often when He comes closest. Not in thunder, not in lightning, but in mercy. The Divine Mercy Chaplet was given precisely for this place. Not the mountaintop, the valley, not the choir loft, the hospital bed, not the victorious saint, the broken soul who's barely holding on. Jesus didn't give this prayer to a crowd. He gave it to one hidden woman in a convent. Not because the world was listening, but because it wasn't. Not because the church was ready, but because it needed to be. And what He gave her was not a sermon. It was a lifeline, a spiritual weapon for the days when heaven seems silent and hell seems loud. The words are simple, but the power behind them is cosmic. You're not just saying a prayer, you're participating in an eternal offering. Every time you say, "For the sake of his sorrowful passion," you're standing at the foot of the cross, not as a spectator, but as a soul pouring your wounds into his. Your pain meets his mercy. Your silence meets his surrender. And something happens, not always something you can see, but something eternal, a movement in the heavens, a shift in the spiritual realm. Angels attend, chains begin to weaken, light begins to press into places you didn't even know were dark. Because mercy moves where faith is spoken, and the chaplet is faith, spoken in the language of the broken. You're not alone. That ache you feel, that emptiness that won't go away, it's not a void. It's a space God is making room to fill. But he can't fill what's already crowded. Silence isn't his rejection. It's his clearing. His way of preparing you for the one thing that's always been true. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. Maybe no one else sees what you're carrying, but heaven does. Jesus does. And he has given you a prayer that doesn't depend on how strong you are. It only depends on one thing, that you speak it, even if your voice trembles, even if your heart is tired, even if your soul doesn't feel ready. Speak it, and watch what happens when mercy meets silence. God is not punishing you with stillness. He's inviting you into something deeper, a communion that isn't based on feelings, but on faith, a connection that isn't found in noise, but in surrender. The Chaplet of Divine Mercy is not just a prayer for when things are going well. It is the language of the wounded crying out to the wounded Savior. And the response he gives is always the same: mercy. So if this is your silent season, you're not failing. You're being positioned. And if this silence has lasted longer than you expected, it only means the mercy coming is greater than you imagined. Pray. Slowly. Sincerely. Trust that each word carries weight in the unseen world. Because when heaven is silent, mercy still speaks. The chaplet was not meant for the saints, but for the broken. Most people think that holy things are reserved for holy people, that prayers like the Divine Mercy Chaplet are for nuns in convents or priests in collars. That mercy is for those already worthy of it. But that's not what mercy is. Mercy, by its very nature, runs in the opposite direction. It's not drawn to the polished or the perfect. It's drawn to the collapsed, the ashamed, the ones who look at the cross and think, "That can't be for me." And that's exactly who Jesus had in mind when he gave this prayer to the world. He didn't reveal it in a palace. He didn't place it in the hands of a scholar. He whispered it to a young nun named Faustina, who barely finished school, who had been rejected by multiple religious orders, and who considered herself the weakest among many. That's where he started. With weakness. Because mercy flows best where the walls are already down. The Divine Mercy Chaplet was never meant to be a trophy for the spiritually elite. It's a rescue rope for the drowning. It's not a medal you earn after years of spiritual discipline. It's a cry you release when you've got nothing left. And what's most shocking is that Jesus never asked the strong to pray it. He didn't demand it from the sinless. He gave it as a gift to those who feel beyond repair. This prayer is for the addict in recovery who keeps failing, for the woman who can't forgive herself for the abortion she never speaks of, for the man who wears a suit in church but hides an affair in his phone. It's for the teenager lost in anxiety, the mother who lost a child, the prisoner who thinks God erased his name. The chaplet is not for the saints in stained glass. It's for the ones who cry alone in the pews, the ones who've been told by the world, and sometimes even by themselves, that they're too far gone. Jesus didn't come for those who think they're righteous. He came for the sick, for the ones with no strength to pray a full rosary, for the ones who can't fast, who can't focus, who can barely believe. That's the soul he moves toward the fastest, because mercy doesn't wait for your perfection. It moves at the first sign of humility. When you pray the chaplet, you're not trying to prove anything. You're not showing off your faith. You're surrendering. You're saying, God, I can't do this on my own. I can't fix myself. I need you. And that's exactly the place where miracles begin, not because of how beautifully you prayed, but because you dared to approach him while still covered in mud. God is not afraid of your mess. He doesn't flinch at your past, and he's not impressed by spiritual performance. He's moved by truth. Honest, brutal, whispered truth that says, "Have mercy on me." The chaplet isn't about cleaning yourself up before you approach God. It's about bringing your wounds to the only one who can heal them. This prayer is for the days when guilt is louder than grace, when shame suffocates your hope, when you feel like you've said sorry one too many times. That's when Jesus leans in and says, "Say it again. For the sake of my sorrowful passion, have mercy." And he will. He always will. You don't need to be clean to start. You don't need to be confident. You don't need to be consistent. You just need to be willing. Just enough to say the words. Just enough to trust that even if you don't feel holy, the one you're praying to is. And he's not looking for saints. He's looking for souls. The Divine Mercy Chaplet doesn't ask you to be strong. It asks you to be real. And when you finally let go of the mask, that's where healing begins. Because the power of this prayer doesn't come from your lips. It comes from his wounds. And those wounds were opened not for saints, but for the broken. What happens in the spiritual world? When you pray the chaplet, there's a world you can't see, and every time you pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, that world moves. Heaven is not distant. It's layered over this one, hidden behind what your eyes can't perceive. And when you begin the words, "Eternal Father, I offer you," it's not just sound vibrating in your room. It's a spiritual ripple that awakens things far beyond your senses. Most people think prayer is one-sided, that it's just something we say, and maybe God hears it, maybe not. But that's not how the kingdom of God operates. In Scripture, every act of prayer caused something to shift. When Daniel prayed, angels were sent. When Jesus cried out, the veil in the temple tore. And when a soul prays with faith, especially through the passion of Christ, all of heaven responds. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is unlike other prayers because it doesn't just ask for blessings. It offers the very sacrifice that broke the gates of hell. Every word is a direct appeal to the Father based on the suffering of his Son. You are not offering your merits. You're offering the merits of Jesus himself. And in the spiritual realm, that changes everything. When this prayer rises from your lips, angels descend. Not poetic angels, not symbolic ones, real ones, assigned by God to guard, to carry, to respond. They're drawn to the passion. They're drawn to mercy. And when you pray the chaplet, it's like striking a chord that only heaven hears. A frequency that was embedded into creation the moment Christ gave up his last breath. Demons react too, because they know what you're doing. They know you're invoking the blood. They know that this prayer echoes the final blow that crushed their power. And even if you're praying quietly, Even if you're unsure, the spiritual world doesn't need your confidence. It only needs your consent. Every "have mercy on us" is like a bell ringing in the courts of eternity. Every repetition shakes off layers of oppression, breaks ties you didn't even know were there, untangles knots passed down through generations. And you may not feel it right away. You may not see fireworks or light beams from the sky, but somewhere, something falls. Somewhere, something bends to the name of Jesus. Somewhere, grace finds its mark, because you dared to pray. There's a spiritual courtroom above every soul, a place where the accuser brings up every failure, every sin, every shameful memory. And when that courtroom speaks judgment, you don't stand a chance on your own. But when you begin to pray the chaplet, it's as if the Passion is replayed before the eyes of the Father. And suddenly, the verdict changes. Not guilty, washed clean, covered in the blood of the Lamb. This is not metaphor. This is what happens in the places you can't see. Your house changes atmosphere when you pray it. Peace begins to enter. Distractions weaken. Oppression lifts. Not always completely. Not always instantly. But the air changes. Because darkness cannot linger where mercy is invoked. There are saints and mystics who describe seeing light pour from the mouth of those who pray the chaplet. Light that repels evil. Light that draws heaven close. And even if you never see it, the reality is just as true. This prayer is not just an act of faith. It's an act of war. A war for your soul. A war for the people you love. A war for a world that has forgotten what mercy even means. And when you stand in that gap, when you pray even through your exhaustion, you become a soldier. Not with swords, but with surrender. Not with violence, but with blood offered in love. You may never fully know what was stopped because you prayed. What accident didn't happen? What temptation lost its power? What soul was snatched from death? But heaven knows. And one day, when the veil is lifted, you'll see that your quiet prayer in the kitchen, in the hospital, in the car, it moved more than you ever imagined. This is what happens when you offer the Passion. Not a performance, not a magic formula, but a real act of intercession that touches eternity. And eternity always responds. The beads that time forgot, why the chaplet transcends the clock. Time is a concept most humans take for granted. Minutes, hours, days, they dictate what we can do, when we can rest, how long we have to accomplish our goals. We schedule, we rush, we panic at the ticking clock, and we forget that some things exist outside of time. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is one of those things. It was given not to fit within the constraints of human schedules, but to connect the soul to eternity itself. When you hold the beads and begin to pray, you are no longer simply marking hours or decades. You are entering a sacred moment that stretches beyond the calendar, beyond the clock, beyond the limitations of the material world. Each bead is more than a tool for counting. It is a doorway, a bridge between the temporal and the eternal. When you repeat the words of the chaplet, "For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world," you are not only asking for mercy in the now, you are participating in the eternal offering of Christ's suffering. It is a moment when the past, present, and future converge. You are brought to Calvary, yet simultaneously, the grace extends into your present and continues to ripple into the future. The wounds of Jesus are present now, alive and accessible to your soul, not as a story, but as a living reality. This prayer carries a rhythm, a sacred cadence that requires slowing down. Each repetition is meant to sink deeply, to allow the mind to enter a contemplative state where ordinary time ceases to govern experience. While the world is chasing deadlines and appointments, your soul is being drawn into the eternal. The chaplet doesn't just transcend minutes, it transcends the anxiety of life, the weight of the past, and the uncertainty of tomorrow. In this space, mercy flows freely because the distractions of temporal life cannot enter. The way the chaplet collapses time also allows the soul to participate in the sufferings of Christ in a present, tangible way. You are not a spectator watching history unfold. You are co-offering with Him, aligning your heart with His eternal passion. The blood and water that flowed from His side are not distant. They are accessible now, healing your wounds and filling the spaces that life has left broken. And when this happens, the spiritual realm itself bends toward your prayer. Angels attend to the words, unseen powers shift, and grace enters moments that otherwise would have remained untouched. The chaplet acts as a spiritual key, unlocking doors to divine mercy that are closed to those who operate solely on the plane of time. When you pray, even in a few minutes, you create a temporal anomaly. A few minutes of honest prayer may span hours or even days in the spiritual dimension. What you offer now carries eternal weight, impacting events and hearts beyond what your physical senses can detect. This is why the chaplet is especially powerful in moments of urgency or despair. Time does not limit mercy, and the chaplet allows the human soul to operate within that eternal truth. What you might perceive as a fleeting few minutes becomes an intersection of heaven and earth, where your surrender touches eternity and alters reality. Furthermore, this timeless nature of the chaplet is what allows it to reach across generations. When you pray for your family, your community, or the world, the spiritual effects are not bound to the moment of your prayer. They echo, they linger, they create spiritual momentum that influences those who have not yet been born or whose struggles have not yet begun. This prayer exists in a sacred continuum, a river of grace flowing through time itself, always accessible, always alive. To pray the chaplet is to recognize that time, as humans perceive it, is secondary to the eternal plan of God. Every bead, every word, every heartfelt plea operates in a realm where past, present, and future are unified in mercy. When the world rushes, the chaplet slows. When chaos reigns, the prayer creates order in the unseen. When the heart is wounded, the chaplet pierces the veil of time to bring healing. It is a prayer that doesn't age, that doesn't fade, that never expires, because it participates in the eternal truth of God's mercy. This is why the Divine Mercy Chaplet is not a prayer you schedule. It is a prayer you enter. Time does not constrain it. Space does not limit it. The effects extend far beyond your understanding. When you pray, you step into the eternal. You bring eternity into your day. You align yourself with the infinite mercy of God. And that is a force that transcends every clock, every calendar, and every measurement humans have created. How the Divine Mercy Chaplet unlocks the wounds of Christ. The wounds of Christ are not just historical. They are living, eternal, and accessible to every soul willing to approach with trust. When you pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, you are invited into a sacred mystery, a participation in those wounds. Each decade, each repetition opens a channel that connects your heart directly to the suffering of Jesus, not as a distant story, but as a present reality capable of transforming your life. This is not metaphor. This is the spiritual dimension made tangible through prayer. The side pierced by the soldier's lance, the hands nailed to the wood, the feet driven into the cross. These are more than physical marks. They are reservoirs of mercy, infinite and unending, and they hold the power to heal wounds of every kind, emotional, spiritual, and even generational. When you speak the words of the chaplet, "For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world," it is as if you are pressing against those wounds with your own heart. Your brokenness meets his suffering, and grace flows in ways that words cannot fully describe. Each bead is a key. Each decade is a doorway. As your fingers move over the beads, you are guided into the rhythm of surrender. The prayer does not require perfection. It requires openness. It requires honesty. It requires willingness to stand in your own vulnerability and allow the infinite mercy present in Christ's wounds to penetrate your soul. It is a mystical exchange. Your pain offered to him, his healing offered to you. And with each repetition, the barriers you have built around your heart begin to crumble. The Divine Mercy Chaplet unlocks more than just personal healing. It opens spiritual channels that connect the living and the dead, the visible and the invisible, the wounded and the healer. Angels attend to the prayers, guiding them to the places that are most in need. Unseen, spiritual chains begin to break. Sins that have weighed on you for decades start to lose their power. Fear, shame, and guilt begin to loosen their grip. Each decade of the chaplet becomes a conduit, a pathway through which mercy flows freely into areas of your life you thought were unreachable. It is important to recognize that this unlocking is not violent. It does not tear or punish. It invites. It heals. It illuminates. The wounds of Christ are not reminders of suffering alone. They are doors to grace, and the chaplet is the key that opens them. When you pray with sincerity, your heart aligns with the passion, and in that alignment, transformation begins. Your pain, no matter how deep, becomes a space for His mercy to manifest. There is a spiritual intimacy in this process. As you repeat each decade, you are not merely counting beads, you are participating in a divine rhythm established by Christ Himself. Your suffering intersects with His, and this intersection is where miracles occur. Physical, emotional, and spiritual blockages can dissolve. Relationships that seemed irreparable can begin to mend. Inner wounds, long ignored or hidden, begin to find solace and restoration. This is why the chaplet has the power to change lives so profoundly. It directly accesses the source of mercy that Christ left in His wounds. The act of praying the chaplet also cultivates awareness of the interconnectedness of all souls. When you offer each decade, you are not only entering into the wounds of Christ for your own healing, but for the healing of the whole world. Every bead carries a ripple effect, a spiritual echo that touches others, often without your knowledge. Mercy moves quietly, yet powerfully, through the unseen realm, transforming situations, softening hearts, and providing divine intervention in ways that the human eye cannot detect. Finally, the beauty of this prayer lies in its accessibility. You do not need a theological degree, a perfect memory, or flawless devotion. You only need the willingness to approach Christ's wounds with humility, faith, and honesty. The chaplet invites every soul, broken or strong, young or old, to experience firsthand the mercy locked within those wounds. And once that door is opened, once the wounds are unlocked, your life begins to reflect the healing and power that only Christ can give. In this sacred encounter, the Divine Mercy Chaplet becomes more than a prayer. It becomes a bridge, a channel, a living connection to the eternal source of grace that flows from the heart of Jesus. The wounds are no longer distant. They are near. They are present. They are active. And they are waiting for you to touch them through prayer, to allow mercy to transform your life in ways you never imagined possible. The secret dialogue between Jesus and the dying soul. There is a moment that every human will face, and yet few truly understand: the hour of death. It is a threshold, a doorway, a passage from the world into eternity. Most approach it with fear, hesitation, or uncertainty. Questions flood the mind. Will I be ready? Will God see me as I truly am? Have my sins become my permanent shadow? In this hour, the soul is fragile, exposed, and fully alive to the spiritual realm that surrounds it. It is in this moment that the Divine Mercy Chaplet reveals its deepest power. It becomes a conversation between the soul and Jesus himself. This dialogue is not spoken aloud in ordinary language. It is a communion of hearts. Each word of the chaplet reaches the depths of the soul and touches Christ in his wounds. When a dying soul prays or has the chaplet offered for it, the spiritual realm shifts. Jesus leans close, attentive, aware of every unspoken fear, every hidden sorrow, every regret that has haunted the heart. In the silence of death, the chaplet is the voice that speaks, the bridge that unites temporal weakness with eternal strength, the lifeline that assures the soul it is not alone. The dying soul does not encounter judgment first. It encounters mercy. The wounds of Christ, already opened for all, are present. Every repetition of "for the sake of his sorrowful passion" acts as a key that unlocks the gates of grace. It is as if the weight of sin, guilt, and fear is laid before him, and his infinite love and mercy flow through those wounds directly into the soul. Angels guide this flow, protecting it from the darkness, ensuring that the words offered, whether by the dying or by those praying for them, penetrate the deepest corners of the spirit. This is a moment of intimate transformation. The dying soul experiences an unprecedented closeness to Christ, a clarity of understanding, and a release from the temporal burdens that have defined its earthly life. In this sacred dialogue, Jesus often does not need words. His presence is enough. Every beat of his heart, every memory of his suffering, every drop of his blood communicates forgiveness, healing, and restoration. The chaplet allows the soul to participate actively in this exchange, to unite its own suffering with his passion, and to accept grace freely and fully. Even for those praying on behalf of another, the effect is profound. Your voice, your intention, your devotion, carried through the chaplet, reaches the dying soul like a spiritual echo. It connects two worlds, the living and the eternal. It provides comfort to the soul as if Jesus himself were speaking directly to it, whispering words of love, assurance, and promise. The soul begins to surrender fear, relinquish doubt, and embrace trust, not because of human strength, but because the power of mercy cannot be denied. In this secret dialogue, every prayer becomes a shield, every repetition a message, every decade a conversation in which mercy is both spoken and received. Time seems to collapse, past regrets dissolve, the present becomes sacred, and eternity stretches out in peace. The dying soul is not left alone with its pain or its failures. Instead, it is enveloped by the mercy that flows from the wounds of Christ, a mercy that transcends all human understanding and surpasses the limitations of this world. Death is no longer a moment of fear, but a threshold of hope. The chaplet transforms it into an intimate encounter with divine love. The dialogue is subtle, yet potent. It does not need ceremony or spectacle. It needs faith, sincerity, and the courage to trust that Jesus is present. And in that presence, the soul experiences freedom from chains that have bound it for a lifetime. Darkness retreats, peace arrives, mercy triumphs. Through this sacred exchange, the chaplet demonstrates its highest calling, to guide souls into the eternal embrace of Christ, to assure them that they are never abandoned, and to reveal the profound truth that, even at the edge of life, grace is active, mercy is present, and Jesus is speaking, quietly, powerfully, personally, to the soul that reaches out to him. The mercy that interrupts generational curses. Many people live under burdens they cannot fully explain. Patterns of failure, cycles of conflict, repeated losses, and hidden wounds seem to pass silently from one generation to the next. These are not coincidences. They are spiritual chains, legacies of brokenness that have persisted through families, often unnoticed until the weight becomes unbearable. The Divine Mercy Chaplet, however, has a power that transcends personal healing. It reaches backward and forward across time to interrupt these patterns and restore mercy where darkness once ruled. When you pray the chaplet intentionally for your family, you are invoking a force that the world rarely recognizes. Mercy does not operate within the constraints of your lifetime alone. It stretches across the spiritual connections of your bloodline, entering places that were wounded long before you were born. Each repetition of the prayer, each "for the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world," functions like a spiritual lever, lifting burdens that have been passed down, dissolving anger, resentment, and generational fear. The chaplet becomes a tool not just for personal liberation, but for ancestral redemption. This is not merely theoretical. The Church has long recognized the power of intercessory prayer to heal the invisible bonds that tie families together. When the chaplet is prayed with sincerity, it aligns the soul with the infinite mercy present in the wounds of Christ. This alignment creates an opening in the spiritual realm that allows grace to flow where it has been blocked. Chains that seemed permanent begin to weaken. Hearts that have inherited bitterness and shame begin to soften. Children and parents, grandparents and grandchildren find themselves touched by peace that no human hand could ever deliver. The chaplet interrupts cycles that often seem inevitable. Families may struggle with poverty, addiction, emotional instability, or relational breakdowns. These struggles can feel predetermined, like shadows they cannot escape. Yet the Divine Mercy Chaplet acts like a spiritual scalpel, cutting through patterns that have held generations captive. When prayed with focus and faith, it reaches beyond the visible, touching the hidden corners of your family's spiritual history. Mercy does not merely forgive, it transforms. It releases what has been held hostage by fear, anger, or pride. The beauty of this intergenerational impact lies in its subtlety. You may never see immediate results. You may not witness every breakthrough. Yet the prayer creates a ripple, sending waves of grace into spaces that human effort alone cannot reach. Sins, mistakes, and trauma that were never addressed begin to lose their grip. Hearts once hardened against love begin to open. Emotional wounds soften under the weight of divine mercy, and the next generation begins life with a measure of freedom that was previously denied. Moreover, this prayer cultivates humility in the one who offers it. It teaches that your own liberation is connected to the liberation of others, that mercy is not private but communal. As you pray for the healing of your ancestors and descendants, your own heart grows in empathy, understanding, and compassion. The chaplet becomes both a personal and collective instrument of grace, a channel through which God's mercy reaches the past, the the present, and the future simultaneously. The effectiveness of this prayer depends not on eloquence or ritual, but on faith and intention. Each word must be offered sincerely, each decade prayed with purpose. Your hands may tremble over the beads, your voice may falter, your heart may feel weak, yet these are precisely the conditions in which mercy flows most powerfully. God does not require perfection. He requires openness. And the chaplet, when prayed with trust, has the unique ability to reach into the deepest layers of family history, breaking generational curses and planting seeds of reconciliation, forgiveness, and peace. When the chaplet is embraced in this way, it transforms family lines quietly but profoundly. What once seemed inevitable is now subject to divine intervention. Hearts begin to heal. Relationships begin to mend. Patterns of dysfunction lose their power. And through the simple repetition of this prayer, mercy not only covers the soul who prays, but radiates outward, bringing liberation to countless unseen lives. In this sacred act, you are not merely praying for yourself or even for your family alone. You are joining in a divine work that alters the spiritual trajectory of generations yet to come. When you pray for others, this is what they receive. Most prayers are personal, offered for one's own needs, fears, and desires. But the Divine Mercy Chaplet holds a power far beyond individual intention. When you pray it for others, whether loved ones or strangers, the effects extend invisibly, profoundly, and sometimes in ways you could never imagine. The moment you lift your voice or focus your heart in intercession, the spiritual world responds. Angels move, doors of grace open, and mercy descends where it is most needed. What you offer in faith reaches beyond physical presence, transcending distance, time, and circumstance. Praying for another person is not a passive act. It is a direct participation in God's work of redemption. Every repetition of, for the sake of His sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world, sends an invisible echo into the spiritual realm, touching the soul for whom the prayer is intended. Even if the person is unaware, even if they do not believe, the power of your prayer begins to influence their spirit. It can comfort the afflicted, illuminate dark corners of doubt, release burdens of guilt, and strengthen hearts that have been weakened by fear or sin. There is a spiritual intimacy in this act of intercession. You are entering into the struggles of another soul, not as an observer, but as a participant in the flow of mercy. Your prayer unites your intention with Christ's infinite love. The wounds of Jesus, offered through each decade, act as conduits of grace. As you speak the words of the chaplet, you are not merely repeating phrases. You are offering a bridge from heaven to a soul in need. Mercy travels along that bridge in a way that is immediate yet eternal, subtle yet undeniable. The effects of these prayers can manifest in countless ways. Sometimes they appear as inner peace in the person you are praying for, a sudden release of anxiety, or a clarity that seems to come from nowhere. Other times, protection is granted in ways that escape notice. An accident avoided, a temptation resisted, a moment of reconciliation that changes the course of a life. The chaplet carries the weight of Christ's passion into these lives, and its impact can ripple far beyond what human eyes can see. One prayer can touch generations, weaving grace into unseen threads of family, community, and society. Praying for others also transforms the one who prays. Your heart expands in empathy and compassion. Your faith deepens as you witness, often in subtle ways, the unseen results of your intercession. The chaplet teaches that mercy is relational. It flows through connection, not isolation. Every prayer for another is a declaration that God's love is not limited, that His grace is sufficient for every soul, and that your intention, however small it may seem, participates in the divine plan. Even when your loved ones are distant or spiritually hardened, the chaplet has the ability to penetrate barriers. Spiritual resistance cannot stop the flow of grace. Your prayers, combined with the infinite merits of Christ's passion, can touch hearts that seem closed, illuminate minds clouded by doubt, and soften spirits hardened by sin. This is why the chaplet is a prayer of immense power. It is not confined by human limitations. It operates in a realm where mercy reigns, where God's will can manifest without delay or interference. The simplicity of the chaplet is deceptive. Each bead, each phrase, carries immense spiritual weight. When offered for others, it becomes a channel for divine intervention, healing, and protection. It is a prayer that does not demand visibility or recognition. Its power is most potent in the unseen, in the quiet persistence of faith. Even when the world scoffs or circumstances appear unchanged, mercy is working. It reaches into the soul, planting seeds of transformation that may take time to blossom, but which always bear fruit when nurtured by continued devotion. By praying the chaplet for others, you become a vessel of grace, a conduit through which God's mercy flows freely. The spiritual world responds to your faith, amplifying your intention through angels, saints, and the inexhaustible power of Christ's passion. Your prayers create ripples in eternity, touching lives in ways visible and invisible, immediate and lasting. And in doing so, you discover the profound truth that mercy is not limited to what we experience personally. It is a force that, when invoked with faith, extends outward, transforming the lives of others and revealing the infinite scope of God's love. The Divine Mercy Chaplet as a shield in the end times. The world is changing in ways that often leave hearts anxious and minds unsettled. Chaos seems to increase. Fear multiplies, and darkness can feel overwhelming. Yet, in the midst of all this, the Divine Mercy Chaplet was given not only as a prayer for personal healing, but as a spiritual shield for the turbulent times in which we live. It is a protection for souls, a weapon against despair, and a fortress of mercy that can hold even when the storms of life rage with unprecedented intensity. The chaplet does not require grand gestures or public demonstrations. Its power lies in its simplicity and its connection to the wounds of Christ. Every word, every bead, every repetition carries with it a divine defense. When you pray it, it forms a spiritual barrier around your life, around those you love, and around those for whom you intercede. This barrier does not always act visibly, but it functions in the spiritual realm, intercepting attacks, softening the blows of temptation, and shielding hearts from the corrosive effects of fear, doubt, and despair. In times of spiritual warfare, the chaplet becomes a conduit for angelic intervention. Angels assigned to protect, guide, and fight for the souls of believers are drawn to the prayers offered with faith. The repetition of the words, "For the sake of His sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world," reverberates through the spiritual realm, signaling a direct connection between heaven and the soul praying. Each bead becomes a line of defense, each decade a strategic act of spiritual warfare that releases God's power into unseen battles being waged around you. This protective power is particularly critical in the end times, a period prophesied to challenge faith, integrity, and endurance. As darkness rises, the chaplet provides both armor and light. It fortifies the soul against despair and doubt, strengthens the spirit to resist temptation, and creates a sphere of divine presence that cannot be penetrated by evil. Those who pray it faithfully experience an unseen safeguarding, as though their hearts are surrounded by a fortress of mercy that shields them from spiritual attacks, even when the trials of the world grow more severe. The chaplet also serves as a warning and a reminder. It reminds us that the spiritual realm is real, that the choices we make resonate beyond what we see, and that mercy is an active force capable of countering the growing forces of darkness. It empowers the soul to remain vigilant, not out of fear, but out of trust. Trust that the wounds of Christ, the very source of mercy, are alive and working for the protection of those who seek Him sincerely. It teaches the faithful that the ultimate battle is not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces, and that the weapon of mercy is both defensive and transformative. When you pray for others using the chaplet, the protective effect extends beyond yourself. Families, communities, and even entire regions can experience the influence of this prayer in ways unseen by human eyes. Misfortune may be averted, dangerous situations softened, and spiritual resilience strengthened in ways that do not always become immediately apparent. What seems ordinary in the material world is often extraordinary in the spiritual realm, where mercy acts swiftly and powerfully. Even in moments of doubt, when faith feels weak, the chaplet continues to act. Its efficacy does not depend on perfection, eloquence, or grand displays of devotion. It relies on willingness, sincerity, and trust. Praying it daily, consistently, or even once in profound need creates a spiritual presence that strengthens, shields, and sanctifies the soul. It is both proactive and reactive. It anticipates attacks before they come, and it repairs vulnerabilities as they arise. In this way, the chaplet functions as a spiritual shield not only for the individual, but for the collective body of believers. It channels Christ's infinite mercy into the world, countering the darkness that seeks to divide, destroy, and discourage. The repetition of its sacred words aligns your soul with the eternal victory of Christ over sin, death, and evil, providing a tangible experience of protection in a world that often seems unsafe and uncertain. Praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet in these times is an act of courage, faith, and spiritual strategy. It is a conscious decision to place yourself and others under God's protection, to engage in the unseen battles with the authority of the wounds of Christ, and to embrace mercy as both defense and empowerment. Those who pray it discover a strength that surpasses human understanding, a peace that outlasts chaos, and a shield that is forged in divine love, prepared for the trials and challenges of today and the days to come. What saints, exorcists, and the forgotten know about this prayer? The Divine Mercy Chaplet carries secrets that even the world's most devout seldom fully understand. Many saints, spiritual guides, and even exorcists have quietly testified to its extraordinary power. Yet these truths are rarely spoken from the pulpit. For centuries, the wisdom of those who have encountered the chaplet in its deepest spiritual dimension has remained largely hidden, reserved for those who seek the mercy of God with intensity and faith. To uncover what these witnesses know is to glimpse the extraordinary reality behind a prayer often underestimated by casual devotion. Saints have long recognized that the chaplet is more than a prayer of recitation. It is a tool for spiritual transformation. Its power lies not in human eloquence, but in alignment with Christ's passion. Those who approach it with sincerity find that it opens channels of grace that bypass human limitation. Saints have described moments when, through the chaplet, divine light entered the most hardened hearts, bringing healing, revelation, and a profound sense of mercy that could not be explained in ordinary terms. What others may view as routine repetition becomes, in their hands, a conduit for miracles. Exorcists, whose work engages with the spiritual realm daily, have testified to the chaplet's protective capacity against evil. They have witnessed how the repetition of its words creates a spiritual barrier that demons cannot penetrate. In cases of intense spiritual oppression, the chaplet has been used as a weapon, not of violence, but of grace, invoking the blood of Christ and aligning the faithful with heavenly forces. Those who have seen its effects know that even the faintest prayer, offered with faith, can disrupt the strategies of darkness. The chaplet is not merely a prayer. It is an active spiritual engagement with forces that exist beyond ordinary perception. Many forgotten mystics and devout souls who never achieved fame also understood its depth. In convents, monasteries, and private chambers around the world, individuals prayed the chaplet in times of personal and collective crisis. They discovered that it could heal emotional wounds, reconcile broken relationships, and bring peace to regions of spiritual desolation. They knew intuitively that each repetition connects to the wounds of Christ in a living, present way. This knowledge, though often unspoken, forms a hidden tradition of wisdom that emphasizes mercy as both a personal and universal force. The chaplet's power is consistent, regardless of one's rank or visibility in the Church. Saints, exorcists, and the overlooked all agree that the prayer's efficacy comes from the heart, not the title. It does not rely on prestige, education, or ceremonial display. A simple, honest recitation offered with faith can accomplish more than years of ritual without devotion. This is a profound lesson. Divine mercy is accessible to every soul, and the chaplet is its channel. The prayer transcends human hierarchy, reaching directly into the spiritual mechanisms of God's grace. One aspect often overlooked is the chaplet's ability to act in both offense and defense within the spiritual realm. Saints and exorcists alike have described how it protects, liberates, and empowers. It can guard against temptation, shield against spiritual attack, and open doors of grace to those who are unaware of the dangers surrounding them. It is simultaneously protective and restorative, a tool that functions within the unseen yet profoundly affects the seen. The wisdom of those who have used it confirms its extraordinary potency. Even more remarkable is the universality of the chaplet's impact. Saints recognize that its power is not limited to any age, location, or culture. Exorcists observed that the words themselves, grounded in Christ's passion, resonate in the spiritual realm regardless of the person praying or the person for whom the prayer is offered. Forgotten devotees knew that this simple, humble devotion could alter the course of lives, families, and even communities. The consistent truth across these witnesses is that the chaplet works because it embodies the mercy of God in a living, active, and eternal way. To engage with the chaplet as the saints and spiritual masters did is to enter into a sacred rhythm of mercy. Each bead, each word, each repetition aligns the soul with Christ's wounds and the will of God. It is a hidden path to healing, protection, and spiritual empowerment. Those who know its secrets understand that it is not merely a devotional exercise, but a living encounter with the divine. By following their example, even those unfamiliar with these hidden truths can access the extraordinary spiritual reality that the chaplet offers, transforming ordinary prayer into extraordinary grace. Why you were led to this prayer in this exact moment of your life. It is no coincidence that you are here, listening, reading, or preparing to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet right now. Every moment of your life, every struggle, every joy, every question that has lingered in your heart has prepared you for this encounter. God works in ways that are subtle, precise, and intentional. He does not leave things to chance. Even the moments you felt lost, abandoned, or unnoticed were part of a divine orchestration, guiding you toward the mercy you now have before you. Your pain, your questions, your sleepless nights, and the silent prayers whispered in solitude have all led you to this exact point. Perhaps you did not see it before. Perhaps the signs were quiet, almost imperceptible. But the path that brought you here has been deliberate. This prayer has arrived in your life at a time when you are ready, not necessarily in comfort, but in need, in longing, in a state of heart that is open enough to receive its power. Timing in God's plan is never accidental. It is always precise. The chaplet arrives as a response to both your visible struggles and the unseen burdens you carry. It meets you at the intersection of desperation and hope. The very fact that you are drawn to it indicates that God has recognized your openness, even in your doubt, and is calling you into a deeper participation in His mercy. It is not merely a suggestion. It is an invitation into a divine conversation, a sacred opportunity to align your heart with the infinite mercy that flows from the wounds of Christ. This moment is also a test of faith. Many have lived their whole lives near the chaplet without ever embracing it fully. Some may have heard of it but ignored it, believing they are unworthy or that it is too simple to have power. You, however, have been drawn here, and that is no accident. Your presence now signifies readiness, not perfection. You are being positioned for transformation, and God will not waste the alignment of your heart with the spiritual tools He has provided. Reflect on the timing of your own life. Consider the struggles that have seemed impossible to overcome, the losses that cut deepest, the questions that have no answers. God has allowed these moments to prepare you to encounter the chaplet with sincerity, humility, and a willingness to surrender. The prayer is a bridge between your present state of need and the eternal mercy that can reshape your soul. It meets you where you are, not where you think you should be. This is precisely why it has appeared in your life now, because you are ready to engage with its power in ways that you might never have been before. The chaplet also functions as a guide for discernment. It illuminates the hidden paths of your heart, bringing clarity to areas of confusion, pain, or fear. By praying it, you align your will with God's will, creating a spiritual channel that allows grace to flow into your life. You begin to see connections between past events, present challenges, and the potential for future growth. The timing of this prayer is designed to help you recognize God's active presence, even in the midst of uncertainty or suffering. There is also a sense of urgency embedded in this moment. The world is full of distractions, doubts, and interruptions. God has brought you here to pause, to focus, and to open your heart fully to His mercy. The chaplet is not a mere ritual. It is an encounter designed to transform you, to recalibrate your spiritual awareness, and to strengthen your connection to the eternal. This moment of readiness is a rare gift, and the prayer is a key to accessing the depth of mercy that has always been available but may have previously gone unnoticed. Finally, this moment is personal. No one else has experienced your exact path, your unique struggles, or your private battles. The chaplet meets you as an individual, tailored to your spiritual condition, inviting you into a conversation with Christ that is intimate, profound, and transformative. It is an opportunity to surrender your life, your fears, and your desires into the hands of the one who knows you completely and loves you infinitely. You were led here for this reason, to encounter mercy at the exact time your soul is most prepared to receive it, to participate in grace that is not random, but divinely orchestrated for your life and for the world around you. Now, let mercy speak through you. You have reached a moment where the prayer is no longer just words on beads. It is no longer a ritual observed from a distance. The Divine Mercy Chaplet has brought you here to a threshold, the place where mercy moves through you, where your heart becomes a vessel, and your life becomes a testimony of grace. This is the point where passive devotion transforms into active participation. You are no longer merely a receiver of mercy. You are now its conduit. The power of the chaplet does not stop with your prayers for yourself. It flows outward. Every sincere repetition of, "For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world," carries not only your intentions, but also the intentions of countless others. Through this prayer, you become part of an unbroken chain of intercession, a living link in a spiritual network of grace that stretches across the world and even across time. Your willingness to pray, to surrender, and to align with Christ's wounds allows mercy to manifest in ways that extend far beyond what you can see. Mercy speaks through action as much as it speaks through words. By embracing the chaplet, you are called to live as a reflection of the compassion you have invoked. Your thoughts, your choices, and your interactions become imbued with the same divine mercy that flows from the passion of Christ. The prayer transforms your perspective, teaching you to see the broken, the suffering, and the lost with the eyes of Christ. In this way, every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every decision to forgive becomes an extension of the prayer itself. This is why the final step is crucial. Letting mercy move through you is a conscious choice. It requires vigilance, humility, and courage. It is easy to return to old patterns, to confine the effects of prayer to your personal relief. But mercy, by its very nature, is expansive. It seeks to reach the world. The chaplet equips you to respond, to act, and to carry God's love into spaces where despair, doubt, and fear reside. You become a living instrument of grace, a bearer of Christ's presence, and a witness to the transformative power of his wounds. The world will not always recognize this transformation. The effects may be subtle, invisible to the human eye, and sometimes even resisted by those who are not yet ready to receive it. But that does not diminish the impact. Every sincere prayer, every faithful repetition, every heartfelt plea aligns you with the eternal currents of divine mercy. You are planting seeds that will grow in hearts, minds, and circumstances, often beyond your awareness. This is the silent work of God's kingdom, and you are an essential participant. Living mercy also means embracing the responsibilities it brings. You are called to forgive, to heal, to comfort, and to guide. The chaplet has prepared you for this by opening your heart to the depth of Christ's love. You are now able to see beyond surface appearances, to recognize pain, to respond with compassion, and to offer solace to those who cannot yet pray for themselves. In this way, mercy becomes active, tangible, and transformative. Ultimately, letting mercy speak through you is about surrendering control. It is about acknowledging that you cannot fix the world alone, but you can become a channel for the one who can. The chaplet is your instrument. The wounds of Christ are your source, and your heart is the vessel. When you allow mercy to flow through you, your life becomes a living testament to the reality of divine love, healing, and transformation. This is the culmination of the journey you have undertaken through this prayer. From silence to brokenness, to intercession, to personal transformation. Now, you are equipped to carry mercy forward. You are invited to become a beacon, a channel, a living testimony of Christ's infinite compassion. Let it move in your words, your actions, and your presence. Let it touch the lives around you. Let the chaplet not only change your life, but use your life to change the world. You are no longer merely a prayer. You are now a bearer of divine mercy. The wounds of Christ continue to flow through you. Let them. Allow them to speak. Allow them to heal. Allow them to transform. And in doing so, become the living embodiment of the mercy you have invoked, the grace you have embraced, and the love that flows endlessly from the heart of Jesus.